to meet you. Nice to meet you.
All right, welcome everyone. So we are, there we go, I think you can see everything. So hopefully we got all of you guys online, and we got some people in the office. So this is going to be a really good presentation. I believe you're going to get some really valuable things out of it. That's why it's good, is because it's useful, it's up to date, and some people are really suffering a lot where they don't have to be. So I think we're going to get some cool things. So concussion recovery, and it's all about recovery. We're going to talk a little bit about the what happens to concussion, how you define a concussion, give some of the basics, but really what we want to know is how do you get better? That's really going to be my focus, and I'm going to give you some takeaways that you can apply for yourself and you can give to others. A little bit in prevention, but largely in recovery. Okay, so concussion recovery. So this is an image of the brain, kind of illustrating the pervasive nature and the level of irritation it can cause. This is some answers that I want you to have and you should have, right? So how concussion lasts for years. Hit my head, I seem to recover, but I didn't. Everybody else thinks I am recovered or I should be recovered, but I'm not. Why not? What do you do if you suspect a concussion? The best nutrients for concussion. So how do you help yourself recover? How long does it take to recover from concussion? And the best case scenarios and the worst case scenarios. What are the 3 best ways to recover from concussion? All right, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. Family chiropractor since 1996, so a little over 30 years now. My focus has always been on nervous system and chronic health problems, and so concussion fits in really nicely with that. Chiropractic neurology, board certified since 2007. Chiropractic neurology is where we learn about how the nervous system works and how we can recover from it, from problems with the nervous system. So you compare that to a medical neurologist and a chiropractic neurologist. Some people come in the office and they say, hey, I'm supposed to see a neurologist. It's like, well, what do you want? Do you want a diagnosis that helps you legally? Well, you made it a medical neurologist or a neuropsychologist to give you that diagnosis that helps you with the school system or something. But if you want to know if you've got a tumor right away and somebody to do surgery or you need drugs, then a medical neurologist is the one you need. But if you're like, no, I don't think, I've been checked out, everybody says I'm fine, I've just got a nervous system problem that won't recover. Well, that's where chiropractic neurology or functional neurology comes in, because we don't use drugs, we don't use surgery, but we do look at things that others may not consider important because they're not infection, disease, or trauma. But we look at them and go, well, that's dysfunction. It's not disease, but it's dysfunction. And if we can help that dysfunction recover, then that can make your life better. Certified in functional medicine, that's where we use nutritional lab testing, and we'll give you recommendations for supplementation or lifestyle change. And lecturer and member of the Interdisciplinary Association of Functional Neurology and Rehabilitation. If you can say it 3 times fast, you get to join. So it's basically where different types of doctors get together and we go, okay, how can we help people restore from nervous system dysfunction? How can we help them restore naturally? And the reason we get great results is because we have a different approach. And it's characterized by this term salutogenesis. Saluto it comes from the Latin saluto, which is health, and genesis, the creation of. So if you want to get healthy, if I want to help you get healthy, I focus on factors that create health in your body and not those that create disease. Because focusing on disease is never going to help you get healthy. There's a place for both, it's just they have different goals in mind. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to go through a few stats here that I think will be a little surprising and eye-opening. Concussion is common. 20% of high school students have had an injury blackout concussion by the time they graduate. So that was a survey of high school students. It was anonymous, so they could tell the truth. 13% of concussions have a loss of consciousness. Right? So you say, oh, I don't have a concussion because I didn't black out. So, well, only 13% of them actually have a loss of consciousness. But 20% of high school students say they've had one where they got a loss of consciousness. So we could say, well, that means there's a lot more than 20% of people had a concussion. So, but we'll just go with 20%, something like that. 52% of high school athletes do not report concussion. Why don't they report it? Well, because either they didn't think it was a big deal, it's like a minor, or they want to play. So they're not going to tell the coach. It's like, well, they're going to pull you, right? Because that's good for your brain now, is not to keep getting it beat after you've had a concussion. It's like, I'm just going to stay in because I don't want to get pulled from the game for the game or the week or the month, right? So a lot of them don't report it. And 1.2% of the population have concussions each year. So a Canadian study shared that. So these are different studies, most of them, sharing how common concussion really is. And it's not that everybody has a concussion, but because some people have concussion more than once, right? And so, but it's pretty common. And it's not sports that are the biggest problem. Sports is only 14% of concussions. We're always thinking about concussions and CTE and football players, and right? Falls, assaults, and vehicle accidents, that's these, account for more than 60% of concussions. Being struck, that would be in sports, right? And other things didn't get categorized well. So concussions are common. So what is a concussion? How would we define a concussion? Well, basically you've got 4 criteria. A plausible cause. All right, we'll talk about what that means. Observable signs, 1 or more observable signs, 2 or more symptoms, and at least 1 exam finding. So what is that? So plausible cause. Your brain gets rattled. That's really what it means. So can I get a concussion from doing this? No, that's not a plausible cause, right? Well, my head moved. Like, yeah, that just doesn't. Whiplash, though, like a car accident, that can cause your brain to hit the skull because you accelerate and then recoil quickly. So even if you don't hit something in the car, that can cause concussion. Or sports accident where you get hit from here and your head whips really quickly. That's a whiplash as well. It doesn't have to be a car accident. Falls on your head, of course, like in soccer or on the ice. So a lot of that going on in the Midwest right now. A lot of concussions happening. Wet floors. Man, that ice or the wet floor, you just immediately fall, and yeah, that hurts. And then if your head is struck by another person or by an object. So that's a plausible cause. And now there are extreme causes which become more likely to have extreme damage. And we'll talk about what that means, especially in children, in a moment. All right, what is a concussion? And the second thing is a sign. So what is a sign? Something you can see, like a road sign, right? So loss of consciousness. This only happens, in this case, this research said 10%. The other one said about 13%. But we're talking about a small number of people. Motionless for more than 5 seconds. Slow to rise. Confusion or disorientation. Amnesia. Vacant look or incoordination. So this guy, if he just had a plausible cause, he also has signs. Like he looks like he's messed up, right? So the odds are he had a concussion if he, or at least he's got number 2, he has signs. Now somebody can look like this and be drunk, right? Now they didn't have a plausible cause so if he didn't hit his head or rattle his brain significantly, he doesn't have a concussion. He's just drunk. He's got a headache, right? So you can have one of these and it'd be nothing, right? But if we start to add them up and we check them all, then that's very likely. Then we define it as a concussion. Number 3, they have 2 or more symptoms. And it's new or worse within 72 hours. So let's say somebody, they fall and hit their head. They have a plausible cause. They then have a headache. That's a symptom. But do they have a sign? If they look fine, there's no sign of a concussion. They don't look confused or disoriented, and they got up really quickly, and they're like, oh, I'm good. But I have a headache. Well, so now it doesn't have to be right away, but now let's say they have had, so maybe, maybe not. If all they have is a headache, well, if they have a headache, that is one of the symptoms, okay? But let's say they had a headache that's not new. It's like, well, I've had a headache for years, and I still have a headache, and now after I hit my head, it's like, well, that's not a new symptom, so that wouldn't count toward this category. But if they have something new, and it can be up to 72 hours after the incident happened, physical, cognitive, and we'll go through simple examples of each of these, sleep or emotional, any of those would be symptoms that would count, categories of symptoms, but not just fatigued or nervousness. Okay, so we'll keep that in mind because these can be other things. And number 4 is an exam finding. Now, what if you don't get an exam? Can you have a concussion without having an exam? Yes, you can, right? Just because like if a tree falls in the forest, I'll change this. Did it actually fall? It actually fell. Whether someone was there to see it fall or not, it actually fell. So you can have a concussion even if nobody examined you and said, oh, you have a concussion. So, but things that would include in this category, and the way it's defined technically is a probable concussion. So, yeah, that's just the technical term they use for it. Instead of it's an actual concussion, it's a probable concussion if you have these other, enough of these signs and symptoms, even if you weren't examined. Okay, balance, coordination, vision, eye movements, memory, attention, neck tenderness. Because if your brain gets rattled significantly, your neck is going to get rattled as well. Neck is not always tender, but it often is involved. And then reflex abnormalities, like we tap the tendons, things like that. All right, brain damage. So what happens with a concussion? There's actually brain damage going on, even if you can't pick it up on an MRI. Now, if you pick it up on an MRI, then it's more likely to be categorized as a traumatic brain injury versus a mild traumatic brain injury. Okay? But brain damage is occurring either way. So what happens? Well, the neurons get torn, and then they start to leak. So this is a neuron. It's got its little fatty coating. These are called Schwann cells or oligodendrocytes, depending on what part of the nervous system. And so this gets torn, stretched and torn. It starts to leak. And this is a very, the neurons in this body of a neuron, I should say the axon here, it is really important that it's healthy because it's what causes, it's the highway along which the signals travel. And so if you've got potholes and you've got exits that shouldn't be there, then you're going to have nerve signals that are not going where they need to go. And so you don't communicate. And so that can be the symptoms, the brain fog or the headache, etc. So what happens technically is calcium leaks out, and calcium then activates glutamate, which causes neurons to fire. So you get neurons firing when they shouldn't be firing. This is overstimulation and then can wear them out. And so this can cause light sensitivity and other things like that, where you get neurons that fire too easily, or sound sensitivity, right? So you have overactive neurons. But also you have sodium, potassium. I think of that, the salt and the ketchup, on the wrong side of the hamburger, right? So it's out on the outside of the bun instead of on the inside. It's leaking. And so the neurons cannot function. And this uses up energy because actually the ketchup is supposed to be on the inside and the sodium goes on the outside. And so this just leaks and they all just go where they're not supposed to go. But the neuron says, well, for me to function, for me to send a signal, I have to have the ketchup and the salt in the right place. And it leaks out in the wrong place, and so now it works really hard, and that work requires the use of energy, which is ATP. And so it's working really hard to get those ions back where they're supposed to be, and that uses glucose and that uses ATP to restore that proper balance. All right, so then you get neurons that are fatigued. You get the whole brain that's fatigued because it's soaking up all this energy. It's like now it can't be used for things that are just normal function because it's trying to just catch up to address this significant dysfunction. All right, so brain damage happens. So this is a biochemical process. We want to make sure biochemically we're supported. So eat hamburgers with lots of salt and ketchup. No, that is not the answer. You've got it there, it's just not where it needs to be. So we'll talk about nutrients that help correct this. Okay, so do you have a concussion? So we know what a concussion is. Plausible cause, observable signs, symptoms, and exam findings. And by the way, if you have more signs and symptoms, then you don't need the exam finding because you can still have a concussion, right? But usually just this does not, just one of these and two of these doesn't classify it as a concussion. Okay, so what are these? So let's go back. How bad is your concussion? So there's specific ways to address this, and yeah, athletic trainers know this. Some of them and physical therapists know this well. People who are on the side of the field, right? they're the ones who are going, okay, let me diagnose with the concussion. Sport concussion assessment tool. It's called the SCAT-6. And in the first 3 days is when this one is used. And then there's the SCOPE-6 Sport Concussion Office Assessment Tool. This is used after those 3 days, up to 30 days. Okay. Often I'll see people, we're talking 3 months or 3 years after their concussion, and so we're not doing this, but we are doing the elements of this, which includes balance, eye movements, memory, nerve testing, both the body and the cranial nerves. So these are really good tests. They're really thorough, but they're just focused on giving it a number to see if see how you're doing. Okay, so when is it, you want to know when, like, okay, I don't just need to go rest this out, sit it out, I need to go to the emergency room. When do you need to do that? Well, there's certain criteria that help us understand if you're more likely to need a CT scan. Now, if you go to the emergency room and you've had any kind of a plausible cause, almost for really sure they're doing a CT scan because of 2 reasons. One, plausible cause, and lawsuits. So for them, it's better safe than sorry, even if it gives you some radiation you don't need. And we'll talk about that too. Okay, but some things you should really take it seriously. If you're over 60 years old, that makes you a lot more vulnerable. Severe headache, severe neck pain, unstable neck. That means if bones are moving around in ways they shouldn't. Skull fracture, worsening signs. So signs means those are things you can see. It's like, oh, they were a little confused, and now they're really confused. So that's a worsening sign. Or they had some blurry vision, and now they have really blurry vision. This is a worsening sign. And greater than or equal to 2 vomiting episodes. So that is, they're not getting better, and that can be some swelling in the brain. So these are reasons that CT scan would be done, and a reason you should get to the hospital and have it checked out. Okay, so if go to the emergency room if you're in doubt. Like blood thinners, that's the reason. So a lot of people over 60 are on blood thinners. So if you're on blood thinners or you're less than 16, these don't necessarily, these aren't all the criteria that we would use. These don't apply necessarily. Of course, this would matter, but there's even more for kids, for people on blood thinners and kids younger than 16. Okay, so if you're not in doubt, it's like, no, none of these are true, and this other paper I'm going to go over for children, they're looking good. It's like, I would still like a CT scan. It's like, well, here, give you an example. A chest X-ray is 0.1 millisievert. What is that? That's just a measure of how much radiation exposure there is. Right? If you had a little radiation tag, you got a chest X-ray. They took the tag, they go, oh, you've been exposed to 1 millisievert or 0.1 millisievert of radiation. A head CT, so a head CT is 2 millisieverts. Well, it's 2, that's not that big a deal. Well, 2 is 200 times 0.1. It's just as if getting 200 chest X-rays. That's a lot of chest X-rays. You're like, well, I'd never do that. That's a lot of radiation exposure, because you're worried about 1 X-ray. What if you got 200 X-rays? Like, okay, again, oh no, turn a little bit again, right? No one in their right mind would do 200 chest X-rays. It's like, I'm going to be glowing and my lungs are going to be on fire and or collapse. Well, that's like getting 1 head CT. That's pretty crazy. But it's worth it if you're going to die. If they don't go in and figure out what's going on in your brain and take care of it right away. If there's an emergency situation. Same thing you would get if you had 8 months of background radiation. That's 200 chest X-rays or 1 head CT. And at the emergency room, they give these head CTs out like stickers and candy canes for people with significant head injuries. Okay, scary TBI for a child. So this is younger than 2 years. This is 2 years or older. I'm going to define a little bit of this for you. This is kind of cool. If you deal with children, you have children, you might want to take a picture of that and you'll have that available. But this is also, you can look it up, it's the PCARN, the Pediatric Emergency Care Applied Research Network, CT rule. If they have an altered mental state, that's what the AMS stands for. So if this is true, then CT of the head is recommended, altered mental state. So that's the confusion, or it's like, wow, this is less than 2 years old. So you can't do all these other tests you could do on adults. Like my 2-year-old they're losing it. They're really disoriented, or it's talking gibberish or things like that. That would be this altered mental state. It's like, this is a big deal. It's not that they're irritated. That's not the altered mental state we're looking at, or they're hurting, right? That's not an altered mental state. The Glasgow Coma Scale, that's used a lot in head trauma. So it's a score of 15 possible. So if they have less than 15, what would that mean? So there's 3 different things they measure: eye movement, verbal response, and movement of the body. Eye movement. They don't respond to your words. That would be a -1. It's like, hello, hello. This is less than 2 years old, but we do have the same thing over here, or 2 years or older. It's like, hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me? And their eyes don't move. Right? They're not even looking to see. They're just nothing, right? Okay, so that's kind of scary. That would be a -1. Verbal response, confused verbal response. So they respond to you, like, hey, how you doing? And like, I don't know. It's like, okay, that's concerning. You might ask more, and if they're like, yeah, I'm just not really sure if I'm okay or not. Well, that may not be confused. They're just not sure how bad they're hurt. But if they continue to be confused, then that's a -1 for this one. And movement, they don't obey commands. So, if you ask them to, all right, can you move your hand? And they're like, they can't move it. They don't respond with any movement when you ask them to move. That would be a -1. Then it can get worse. We're talking about people who are in a coma, because it's a coma scale. So eventually it gets to people where they're in coma. But this is just a coma scale, so you can be just a little bit off and not be in coma yet. Palpable skull fracture, or signs of a basilar skull fracture. So that's back in here. So those are, get a CT. This section is observe versus CT of the head. So it's like, yeah, maybe, maybe not. So yellow. So non-frontal hematoma, what does that mean? There's like a blood blister that's not on the front of the head, okay, somewhere else. I'll let you read through the rest of it, but this is severe mechanisms, and that goes into what we talked about earlier, and this right here. So if they got thrown out of the car, they weren't in a seatbelt, and they got thrown against the window or something, the car rolled, they had some kind of bike crash or car crash, or bike crash with no helmet. I've done that. Got hit by a car once. Yeah, I probably had a concussion. I'll tell you that story in a minute. Fall more than 3 feet, or hit by a significantly heavy object. Those are severe mechanisms. Make the plausible cause more severe. All right, so what happened to me when I was 15 years old, riding a bicycle, and going through different intersections, and there was nobody there. It was a work day in the middle of the day, and
door's not locked.
all right, we have someone knocking at the door that we are not expecting. So, in the middle of the night. Oh, it's a delivery. Yes, thank you, Walmart. All right, okay. So I was biking through, and I didn't have a helmet on, and I got hit by the car. I won't go through all the details, but the car hit me. I went into the windshield and then flew, they said about 15 feet, and then landed. 80 stitches in my arm. Did not hit my head, amazingly, and did not break my leg, although as my bike was bent, right at that seat post right below, that was bent. And it's like, I don't know how my leg wasn't crushed, and I don't know how my head wasn't damaged. But I think there was an angel watching out for me. So anyway, yeah, it turned out okay. But then they went through some of these things for me. And they're like, okay, he said, all right, what's the date? And I'm like, I'm on vacation. I have no idea what the date is. I don't even know what the date is when I'm back at school. He's like, okay, what's the year? I'm like, 19, I forget what it was. Say 88. He's like, 87. So anyway, went through some of these things to make sure I was okay. And I was mostly okay. All right. So when can you get back to sport? When can you get back to school? So if you go back too soon, you're more likely to have a more severe second concussion. So this can be bad news. It can be really bad for some people, and it causes death. After the second concussion, evaluation is normalized. That's when you can go back if you're being evaluated. Although it's okay if you have some symptoms that persist. So it doesn't mean everything has to be gone. It's like, oh, I still have a little bit of a headache or some neck pain. It's like, oh, you can't go back then until all your pain's gone. That's not necessarily the case, but you should be relatively normal on your evaluation. At least back to your baseline, right? Balance, coordination, vision, eye movements, memory, attention, neck tenderness, and reflex abnormalities. Those are the things we checked for. Those are the signs and symptoms that we evaluated for in the exam. And once those get back to normal, then we're good, or at least closer to normal. So concussion is pervasive. It affects your whole brain. And we'll talk about how this could, what would it look like in you. It's like, have I had a concussion? Even if it was years ago. So there's autonomic, vestibular, body, and visual. And that's how we develop as well. Our autonomic system starts working, beating our heart. Vestibular is being aware of where we are in space or in relationship to gravity, being aware of and being able to move our body, then using our eyes after we're born, and then cognitive, starting to think and understand things. That's also how we treat. So we want to make sure that each of these systems is building on the other, because if we try to go, okay, let's just work on, oh, I know you're having trouble with learning after that concussion, but you're also having trouble with your eye movement, or you're having trouble handling when you sit up, you get dizzy. So we want to address these things so that these will more naturally come online. Okay, so autonomic, that was our first one, right? What is that? We're dealing with organ function and blood flow. It's the autonomic, or think of it, the automatic nervous system. These problems are present in 92% of people who had concussions. And 100% had nervous system dysfunction, autonomic nervous system dysfunction, when they were physically challenged. And then these problems manifested. So almost everybody is dealing with this. And everybody had a concussion. Exercise intolerance is one example of it. Brain fog, and lots of other things potentially. It could be with the heart, the eyes, blood flow, changes during exercise or posture, digestion issues or sexual function. All that is controlled by the autonomic nervous system. The vestibular, that's our second one up. Essentially that's movement, awareness, and adaptation to movement and gravity. That can affect our muscular system and our perception of where our body is in space. With muscular, we might feel tightness, or we're more likely to have injuries or headaches. With perception, here we're dealing with dizziness and vertigo. So for example, when people get car sickness, that is this disconnect between what we think is going to happen and what actually happens. You notice the driver almost never gets car sick because they know exactly what's going to happen, and they can feel the wheel and they're making the changes. And the farther you get back in the bus, the more likely you are to be sick, because what you see is like, wow, everything's swishing around, right? There's incongruence between what you expect and what actually your body perceives. So dizziness, vertigo, headaches, migraines. And then the next tier up is body. Specifically, we're talking about the cervical spine, especially here. The curve of your neck matters. And if you have a curve of less than 20 degrees, it causes nerve interference and irritation. There's a lot more to that, but I'll just leave that there. Head forward posture. So if your head is forward more than 20 millimeters, when we measure this on x-ray, again, it causes nerve irritation and interference. Joints and nerves, causing neck pain, headaches, migraines, dizziness, vertigo, and interfering with the autonomic nervous system and vestibular system, which are those two bottom tiers. Right? So now one system's undermining the other system. So they all tie in together. Vision and eye movements, now we're getting toward the top. This is really critical though. Static vision is when you're not having to move around, just looking, right? This is what your optometrist checks. It's a product of the retina and the occipital lobe back here. And then active vision is dependent on eye motion and stabilization. So when we're moving around, can you maintain your vision, central vision on a moving target? The target's moving, your body's moving. We think about jogging. That's really complex to have your eyes be able to stay on one spot while we're moving around. Super easy, we do it naturally, but it's really complex. And this involves the somatic, or the neck. Somatic means body, as well as the vestibular system. And it affects our balance, coordination, reading, sports performance. And our last is cognitive, which is thinking. So it's focus, attention, delayed gratification, planning, memory, and mental flexibility. Mental flexibility is being able to change, right? So we have some people who are, like kids with ADHD, sometimes they're super focused on something, right? Or like, my kid doesn't have focus, but he gets focused on something, and wow, he's really focused on that game. I could do that for hours. Well, he doesn't have mental flexibility at that point, right? Okay. All right. So there's two other things that go on here. So in addition to all these four categories we have neighboring neurons. This is a picture of the brainstem. The brain's up here, the brainstem, and the spinal cord goes down here. And there's different nuclei. So trigeminal, that's the face. Abducens, this is eye movements to the side. So this goes to salvatory nuclei, goes to different organs in the mouth. Nucleus ambiguous deals with a lot of different organ function. So these are next to each other. That's what we say neighboring neurons. And so they impact each other. And think about this, you're the product of the people that you hang out with and the books you read. You may have heard that before. So the same thing's true of the nervous system. The people can be thought of as the nuclei. What people are around you, because they are having an influence on you. And if you have a dysfunction in one, it's going to cause a dysfunction in the other. And so it may seem like, let's say this yellow one, this orangish one here is not working well. It may also appear that this yellow one's not working well, even though it may be perfectly fine, but because of the influence, the electrical influence of the nearby neuron, then it doesn't work well. And so that's what we're doing when we're evaluating. We're saying, okay, what can we find if there's a dysfunction in something, like I'm having trouble reading, or I'm having trouble with balance, or eye movements, or brain fog. We're like, okay, that's your primary symptom area. Now we'll do evaluation to look for nearby neurons that may also be dysfunctional, and then can we restore that function? And that if we restore one function, then it often helps the more complicated, higher end functions start working better. All right. And then the last one here is signal incongruency impact. Wow, big set of words. So if you lose accuracy, then you have mismatch between sensations, alignment, and organ or muscle responses. All right, this is kind of complex too, but it's really the heart of where we get the results. These last two is doing a real thorough evaluation and finding where there's this mismatch. That's like the practical example would be the car sickness, right? If you felt like, when you're in the back of a bus, that's the signal incongruency. The bus is going that way, and I feel like we're going this way, and I get car sick. Well, people can live that way. They're not in a bus, but they have that signal incongruency because maybe they have one sensation, but their brain is expecting something different. And so we find those incongruencies and then help to match them back up, and so the body can work normally, physically, chemically, and mentally, emotionally. All right, we talked about brain damage earlier. Neurons get torn and leaky, causing overstimulation of the neurons and the networks. And networks, so you have those nearby neurons, and underactive neurons and networks. How are they? They're overstimulated and underactive. How do you get that, right? Well, you have the leakiness. So the calcium and the glutamate, that's overactivity, but then they get worn out because they're trying so hard to fix themselves, and so that uses up energy nearby and for the whole area. So the whole area starts to become dysfunctional, and you have energy deficit. Okay. So a lot of stuff there. Now, the question is, do you still have a concussion? So maybe you're like, oh yeah, I kind of had my brain rattled a while back, and I still have some symptoms. Headache, light sensitivity, dizziness, balance trouble, fatigue, vision problems. If you had these after you had your brain rattled, and you still have them, then yes, you're still suffering from the concussion. This would be a post-concussion syndrome. Can we get better? That's what we really want to know now. But yeah, it's a probable that it's from that concussion or that head. Those are physical symptoms. Also could be cognitive symptoms, attention or concentration, feeling slow, brain fog, thinking clearly, short and long-term memory, and mental flexibility. Again, if these happened after your brain was rattled and they're persisting, then it's likely it's from that concussion. We've got a lot of people in the military that are dealing with this, with the IEDs and stuff, and it causes physical, cognitive, sleep problems, sleep that's less or unusual or more than usual, or trouble falling asleep. And finally, emotional problems, anxiety or nervousness, being irritable or easily angered, more emotional feeling or sadness. These are different portions of the brain and different functions of the brain. And if these symptoms are persisting or have gotten worse after a concussion or some significant brain rattling incident, then yes, it's probably from a concussion. So will you recover? Well, most people do. Most people recover within 30 days. And they're like, I'm feeling good. I'm ready to go back to whatever I was doing. And the world's great. Symptoms persist after 30 days in 30% of concussions. Okay, so most resolve, well, that would be like 67%. That's a lot. That's very much most. But that means 33% don't. And so they persist in having physical, cognitive, sleep, or emotional symptoms. And the most commonly reported are headache, dizziness, memory problems. Only 20% of those with symptoms after 3 months recovered even after 3 years. So it's pretty close to that 33. That was just after 30 days. This is actually going up to 3 years. You're still at about 33%. It's 27 at this point. If you haven't recovered after 3 months, then there's a good chance you're not going to recover. Well, we'll put it this way. I said that wrong. 27% of people, only 27% will recover. I'll shoot it again. Only 27% of those with symptoms after 3 months recovered. Okay, so that means 73% did not recover. If they had symptoms at 3 months, most people are not going to recover at that point. So if you haven't recovered by now, you're not going to recover. Unless we do something to help you recover. So, right? If you just let it go, you're probably not going to get better on your own. I have a patient, we'll share her story in a little bit. She came in after a year, and that's the doctor said, yeah, it'll probably, and I think she'd gone to a neurologist, and they said, often these things take a year to come back, and which can be true. And she was young, and so had a more likely chance, a higher chance of recovery. But really, I would look more at 3 months. If it hasn't got better by 3 months, then you need to do something because it's going to be less and less likely that you're going to recover. But I have an even shorter time frame in a moment I'll share. Multiple concussions, we know, cause a greater risk for more severe symptoms and longer recovery. So if it's your second concussion or third concussion, then more likely that you need help because it's less likely you're going to recover on your own. So how do you recover? What's the medical model for recovery? So for the most part, it's wait and see. And there can be a place for that, especially now when you look at the medical model, what are they using to help people recover? For the most part, it's drugs and surgery. All right, well, yeah, don't use drugs and surgery on somebody who had a concussion because they don't need it. It's not going to help them. It's certainly not going to help them recover. It might help them feel better. So wait and see might be the right approach if you're looking for infection, disease, and trauma. But if you're looking to promote wellness, you really can't start promoting wellness too early. All right, so wait and see. That's usually what the primary MD is looking for. But then you can go to specialists if it sticks around. And there's all kinds of specialists you can end up seeing, right? So a therapist of different kind, could be a physical therapist or otherwise, neurologist, chiropractor, vestibular physical therapist, athletic trainer, get the sports hardening in, neuro-optometrist, eye doctor, a neuropsychologist for your cognitive functions and emotional. So this is the medical model for treating, and this can be, if you get all these people involved, then, and I would add others in their nutrition as well, then yeah, there's a really good chance for recovery if you can make all the appointments. It's pretty, and some people have, if you're a professional, you have access to all these, actually they'll come to you, hopefully. So yeah, that's the medical model for recovery. But you can try this on your own. And there are some really good things to do on your own, and I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. Healthy brain lifestyle, and I'll give you some details on what that is later. Physical, mental, and chemical aspects of that. You want to support healing of that damaged brain. We went through that metabolic cascade, the leakiness and the overactivity and the fatigue of the neurons. And this supports that quite a bit, but also low and slow. Low intensity, slow introduction. So when you start to go back into stuff, don't overdo it too quickly is really what that means. And as you gradually build back up, you can see, oh, can I handle it? And if you go a little too hard, a little too fast, then you can back off a little bit because you haven't pushed it too far. But if you jump ahead, then you can cause some more damage that takes you a long time to set back from. All right. And then get help by 2 weeks if your symptoms persist. So, because that 72 hours has passed, we're getting into halfway through our 30 days. At this point, it's a good idea to get some more support, I would say. But we'll tell you some things to continue to do on your own. All right, physical activity. All right, so we talked about physical, mental, and chemical. So this is physical. Don't re-injure, don't get reconcussed, because that's going to be much worse on your brain. Exercise, yes, but do it low and slow. Low intensity, slow introduction. It's better than rest. Used to be, it's like, okay, just rest, just take it easy until all your symptoms go away. This used to be true of everything, right? If you were pregnant, don't move, just lay in bed, right? And if you get surgery, don't move, just lay in bed. If you get a whiplash, just put a collar on your neck and don't move. Well, now there's very little of that. Now it's all get up and go, move and move, because you need that blood flow, you need that nerve activation, you need that nutrition. Movement is health. So the studies have shown now it's better than rest. So in fact, there's a guy who promoted and did some of the research that said rest is best. And now he's come back, he said, no, it's not. So it's good. He updated his recommendations. Rest is not best. Unless you have a really bad whiplash, maybe some instability or severe pain, then you have to go in more gradually. Or you have a lot of dizziness, because obviously you can injure yourself that way. And sleep. You want to sleep at least 8 hours. You feel like, oh, I feel like I need 10 or 12 hours. Like, take it. Your body's trying to recover, and it's just you what you need to do. Okay, then we have mental, in physical, chemical, mental. Again, low and slow as you re-engage in reading and socializing and multisensory things like hobbies or different games. And take breaks as needed, right? Just take it easy. You're going to go low and slow. But you want to re-engage. All right, and chemical. Physical, mental, chemical. Take needed breaks. When you say, well, from what? Well, I started somebody on a really healthy diet. I'll tell you about this diet in a minute. And they were eating like sodas and hamburgers and whatever. I didn't even know what they were eating. They just said, it's so bad, you don't even want to know. I'm like, okay, I'll trust you. And then we started them on a really good, healthy diet. And they came in a few days later and said, I haven't had a bowel movement. I'm like, okay. And then saw them again. It's been 7 days. I haven't had a bowel movement. It's like, okay, this is serious now. I was like, go back to eating the way you were. They're like, really? Like, you know what I was eating? I said, no. I said, I was like sodas and hot dogs and stuff. And I'm like, I hate to say it, but yes, go back and eat that trash. And they did, and their bowel movement started back up. Does that mean that was the healthiest diet for them? Of course not. But it meant that their body wasn't ready to handle that kind of change in diet, that nutrition. They couldn't digest it and metabolize it appropriately. So we had to reintroduce things slowly, and we did that, and then they were great. So if it's a big change, you go slow and low, small changes. So the MIND diet stands for Mediterranean and Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. It's really good for dementia. It's what it's been studied with most, but it's really great for everything because the Mediterranean diet is the foundation of it, and that's good. Lots of antioxidants, anti-inflammatories, low glycemic, whole foods, quality protein. Fermented foods are good too because that's helping your gut health. When you've got a brain injury, you often have gut problems as well. They're interconnected. They affect one another. And supplements. So my favorites are the Mercola multivitamin, Pro Omega Curcumin by Nordic Naturals, Ultiflora Synergy by Metagenics, and Mercola Greens by Mercola. So if you had to pick 4 to take, those would be it. Yeah, I won't go into all that, but there's your quick solution for prevention because if you're well nourished, research has shown if you're well nourished before you have a concussion, you're going to recover better. Shocker. Okay, so what is the wellness model? We talked about the medical model, we talked about you're recovering on your own, and now a wellness model. Well, prevention through wellness. Well, what is that? Well, do all the things that you're recovering on your own incorporated, right? The diet and the mental and physical exercise, all that's key. Chiropractic adjustments to help your spine be working properly. And I had a patient one time who they'd been in an auto accident. We treated them, got them all recovered, and literally the day after I released them from that series of care, they were in another auto accident. And they were so sad. And I said, yeah, there's no good time for an accident. This is terrible. I said, but there is no better time. If you're going to be in an accident, there was no better time for you to be in an accident than after you are fully recovered. Because if you get re-injured, just like a concussion, right? If you get a second concussion before you recover from the first one, it's going to be exponentially worse. So, yeah, prevention, make sure that spine is working well, make sure your biochemistry is working well, so when your brain gets damaged, that it has everything it needs to recover quickly and well. Holistic support includes neurological support, nutrition, manual therapy, exercise, and education. And then we refer to specialists for medical intervention or support. There's a place for that, right? So there's a place for neurooptometrists and neuropsychologists and physical therapists, and there's a place for all that. And if we need it, we're going to incorporate it. But we try to incorporate as much as we can so you don't have to be going everywhere, which adds extra stress on your body that you don't need. All right, what are the steps? We want to understand what your symptoms are and your symptom pattern. We start with questionnaires and consultation. Step two is we identify recovery stunting deficits. So what do you have going on in your body that is keeping you from getting well? And we find that through a thorough examination, structural, neurological, and then doing lab work as needed to find nutritional things. And then we work to nourish and rehabilitate your body, specifically and holistically. Holistically means incorporating your whole body function, all your systems, and specifically means identifying exactly what the problem is and exercising it appropriately. And so whether that's a chiropractic adjustment, eye movement exercise, balance, whatever it happens to be, the more specific we are, the more powerful the effect is. All right. Yeah, I was thinking all kinds of things about that, but I will, I'll give you a little bit there. So think if you were learning how to play the piano and your teacher said, okay, I want you to go practice the piano. And she hasn't really taught you what practicing the piano means. And so you go practice on the piano and maybe you get a little better, but you don't have YouTube videos, so there's really, you're just kind of hitting the keys. All right, that's not very specific. You're going to get more comfortable with hitting the keys, but probably not a lot better at piano playing. But if you're more specific, she says, I want you to do these exact key combinations and practice this. That's very specific, and you're going to have a lot more gains because now you're activating the nervous system to activate those keys in a way that you're now going to learn a pattern that is useful that can be built on for better piano playing. So that's the same thing we do with the nervous system. The more specific our adjustment is, the more specific our nerve exercises are, the better they're going to activate the brain in a way that's going to help it restore function, and then you can build on that. And then reassess and refine treatment. So you change as your nervous system changes, and so we want to reassess and say, okay, what next? And again, we can always pull somebody else in if we need to. All right, this is a cool story. We're getting toward the end here. Christine's story of hardship and recovery. I'm going to turn my mic off so we don't get double feedback.
I'm Cynthia Marinos, and this is my I'm Cynthia Marinos, and this is my daughter Christine. Christine is 11. About a year and a half ago, Christine suffered a concussion, a major concussion. She was in a bike accident, and although she had no visible signs of damage on the exterior of her body, we noticed things that were not functioning afterwards. Do you remember any of those things?
Like I did not remember how to put on my belt, and I couldn't remember any of my math problems, so I had to restart with subtraction and addition.
Yeah. So we were told by the doctors to let her ease off schoolwork for about a year, because that's how long it can take for a brain injury to heal, and then introduce math and other things again. So that's what we did. After the year, and we were beginning to introduce schoolwork, and she was going to school, we noticed that there was an inability to do certain things. There was an inability to follow sequential instructions. She could follow the first instruction, but if there were 2 or 3 things to do, she actually wouldn't remember it, or just plain couldn't do it. She had trouble with balance. We had multiple accidents over issues, and I thought it was just clumsiness. Running into the door, had to do tripping. Some of these are standard things that every child has, but this was more. Breaking her wrist because she was walking on a flat surface and fell. Over and over and over again. So no body spatial awareness consistently. I initially really thought, oh, I'm just being an over cautious mom. My child's not performing the way I think she should. She's being more emotional. That might just be her age. Maybe she just needs to listen better. And I waited, thinking this is just normal. But then there were things that really caught my attention. And one of those was the sequential instructions, being so clumsy, and having this distraught reaction to things that were not, really shouldn't be such a stressful thing. Now, I didn't notice this, but when we finally came to Dr. Hobbs and he tested her walking, she didn't walk with any arm swing, 0. And she swayed side to side. And this kind of tied in with what we had noticed in the running. So that was a big signal to me that we were kind of on the right track. And anytime she was in a stressful situation, like school, where they're doing memorization and kids are throwing out answers, and it came to her, it's like a panic attack. Heart racing, out of control. You actually couldn't do anything, breaking into tears over things that don't really matter in the long run. But that racing, the heart racing out of control, was something she actually did not have control over at that point. And that became a very large issue in interaction in school. And I was actually a little scared because of your athletic events, if that would be a problem. Anything else that you think? How are you now?
A lot better.
Yeah, do you fly off with emotions so much?
No.
No, the emotional thing is huge, that she is not so sensitive and reacting with such exaggeration of emotion. Now, teenagers, and she's a preteen, that can happen, but this was way beyond the norm. So that's really calmed down. Mm-hmm. She was able to participate in a choir, get up in front of everybody. She was very stressed to start with. So we've been very happy with the progress. It's been a long road. And I am very thankful that we were able to participate in this program. I feel like, and I come from a Christian perspective, that this was God's leading, and that there is an ability to heal. You just have to know what path to take and be willing to work at it. After treatment began, Christine was able to complete or do the following things. She was able to follow sequential instructions, balance on one leg, mirror another person's movements, keep the beat in music, walk with an appropriate arm swing and without side-to-side motion, discern directional spinning with her eyes closed, focus with background noise, discern her body position in her surroundings, control her emotions, lower her stress level, her heart rate was no longer racing out of control. She had improved muscle tone and coordination, able to study without significant eye strain, and ability to relearn her math facts and retain the material. So that's a very big deal.
Kinds of things, huh? All right, you guys can hear me now? Good. So she had like everything, right? She had physical, chemical, mental, emotional, vestibular, autonomic. It was the whole deal with her. So that was super cool to be able to help her get better. And this had gone on for a year, so it wasn't like she was going to get better. Right? This was sad, but now she recovered entirely, as far as we can tell. So how do we recover? The elements include what did we do for her? Right? We didn't do all this for her, but this are the things that are best to address the autonomic nervous system. Right? We're again going through those tiers of same thing. Goes through development. We go through treatment. Help with brain blood flow and body blood flow, laser, hyperbaric oxygen therapy. That's parentheses because we don't have that, but we're hoping to get it. Sleep hygiene. That's like dental hygiene for your sleep. Sleep is super important. And exercise. The second element, that second layer, vestibular and coordination to help with your movement awareness and adaptation. Neck to brain accuracy reset. So what is that? So when you move your head, that's sending a lot of neurofeedback to your brain, and is it accurate? And so this is why adjustments of the neck help so much. So even if you don't know the neurology stuff, improving neck function improves brain function, period. Gaze stabilization. So that's right, when you're looking, are you able to hold on target? There's specific therapy to recover that. Gravity reset, that's the vestibular system. Are you able to, this is a lot with people who have dizziness or vertigo. They are not responding to gravity appropriately. Gait and movement training, so we heard a little bit of that with Christine. Number 3, your body, specifically your cervical spine. We do muscle work, chiropractic adjustments, home therapy for posture and coordination, because that head forward posture or lack of neck curve, those both interfere with nerve function. And now we have some really good research saying exactly what that is. And that then you restore those. If you just restore the function through adjustments, that will improve all those parameters. What are those parameters? Head movement accuracy, eye movement accuracy, balance, autonomic nervous system function, and speed of transmission of nerves to the brainstem. So this research was done 10 weeks, 3 times a week, 10 weeks, chiropractic therapy, and improved all those functions. If they restored the head forward posture or the curve, the durability of those improvements was much more. So we try to get both if we can. All right, number 4, vision and eye movements. Vestibulo-ocular is what that stands for, vestibulo-ocular movement. Eye movement and coordination exercises, carefully coordinated with the vestibular system and the neck. So we did a lot of that work this week with people. And cognitive, dual tasking, what is that? Well, that's doing 2 things at once. And not 2 cognitive things, but doing a physical thing and a cognitive thing. So maybe that's balancing on a balance board, or it's doing finger to nose while you're also counting backwards by 3s, or thinking of as many people's names that start with M as possible. Things like that. That's dual tasking. Sometimes that just shuts people down. And if it does, then that's probably not good for them. They need to be able to do it, but it's not helpful at that point. But if they can get through it, then it can certainly make them stronger. Emotional regulation biofeedback. So we use a program called Heart Math, and it measures your heart rate variability, and then you learn how you can change that autonomic function with your by choosing your thoughts, and specifically choosing your emotions. And Brain HQ is a home-based exercise for multiple brain domains. It's really good, and you can do it for free. You can do one exercise every day on this for free, which is super cool, or you can pay like $100 a year and do as many exercises on it as you want. Number 6, neighboring neurons, the people you hang out with and the books you read. So when we're doing our evaluation, we're looking really carefully for nearby nuclear activation. Nuclei is the plural of nuclear. And a nucleus is, right, it's this combination of nerve cell bodies. That's what a nuclei is, a nucleus. So we consider the brain location and the influence on others. And the network connection, which can be things that are far away. So we may work on the left cerebellum. We know left cerebellum communicates to the right cerebral cortex. And so these are far away, but they are definitely connected. But you also have vision that comes in here. Your eyes comes in and then starts here and then goes up these progressive steps. And then this actually controls eye movement up here. So these are networks that are involved with each other. So we consider those brain connections and their influence. And finally, signal incongruency. If you have feedback and perception that does not equal reality, then you have dysfunction in the body. And any of these symptoms, autonomic for sure, but the cognitive, the physical, all that can be affected by the signal incongruency. So we want to reset that to normal. So we coordinate elements 1 through 6 that we just talked about. What are those? The vestibular, body, vision, and eye movements, cognitive, neighboring neurons. We coordinate all those to restore accuracy between sensations, alignment of the body, and the body's response, or the body's responses to those things. For example, a response would be a change in blood pressure, or a change in muscle tension, or a change in posture. Those are body responses. And we have one more, extra credit. Number 8, the Bionutritional Foundation, addressing deficiency, toxicity, and gut-brain health. We talked about the mind diet, core recovery nutrients, we talked about those, multivitamin, essential fatty acids, probiotic, and greens. And tests for functional levels. We could do a lab test to look for deficiencies, and the supplement for the person. So this would be just a general supplementation. This would be specific after we tested. All right, last 2 slides here, I think. So concussion recovery discovery program. So what will we do if you're like, okay, wow, there's a lot of stuff, and yes, I think I have the problem, and it hasn't got better on its own. I want to get better. What do I do? So you would, this is what we would do. We want to understand your symptom pattern with a history consultation, history and consultation, right? We start with some questionnaires, and then we sit down and we talk. What's going on with you specifically? What have you tried? How's it going? And then we do an examination, structural, neurological, and nutritional. I won't read through all that. And lab testing would come later. And then we'd nourish and rehab specifically and holistically. Very simple. Okay. And this is what, so usually we charge $375 for this, which is a lot less than most places would. But this may take us a couple days to get all this done. So if you contact us within the next 2 weeks, we will give you a seminar price for this, which is $145. Wow, it's getting cheaper as I talk. That doesn't include lab testing, but yeah, so we do that. And we understand that people have concussion or other neurodevelopmental problems that we deal with, right? There's a lot of stress that goes on because you're confused and you're sad and you're not recovering, maybe depressed. And that affects not only you, the whole family gets affected by this. So we do something else. So what is it? Oh, individual. So $145, like I said. We would do the whole family for $245. So let's say I had one patient, one time a lady, she's like, so what's your limit on the family size? And I said, well, how many family members do you have? She said, 7. I said, it's 7 today. So, yeah, so we evaluated them all for 7, for $245, right? And we just told them what they needed at that point. So this is good until February 15th. You don't have to get in by then because you probably can't because we're probably too booked, but at least you call and you make an appointment for something in the near future and we give you that price. And that's it. So, any questions? Anybody online? Anything you have? You're welcome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. All right, thank you for joining us.